Hey everyone, how's it going? This is the Bald Metal Nerd coming at you with really the first review, I think, of these ear pads that I have seen on YouTube. I haven't really seen anybody specifically review the Monoprice ear pads. I got two sets here. I've got their velour, memory foam velour ear pads and their protein leather ear pads. Now, what precipitated me buying these, and married guys, if you're out there, you know my pain. These is what I've been using upstairs in my home for a while. These are Monoprice 8323s, outfitted with some Brainwaves ear pads, right? Very common ear pads, right? And my wife, when she first saw these, she's like, God, that's such an ugly pair of headphones. Why would you want to use it? It's so ugly. And then she put them on, and she's like, these are incredibly comfortable. I'm going to take these for the most part. Thanks a lot, dear. Thanks a lot. So I was like, well, I wanted to have another pair of headphones to use upstairs. That was, and I thought about it. I was like, well, should I just buy another pair of 8323? Should I buy another? That debate inside my head lasted a little while, and then ultimately I did just settle on another pair of 8323s, right? But one thing I know or knew for a fact is the stock ear pads, they've improved them actually. They used to be absolute garbage, but they have improved them slightly. But they're still not what I would call all that great. They're about like maybe the ATH M50X's stock pads. These used to be like some really awful plastic material. Now they're decent-ish, right? They're not great. And I already have tried these headphones on, and the clamping force out of the box is heavy with these. But I'm not really here to do an in-depth review of these headphones. In fact, if you want to see one, I will link in the video description. I did do one on these headphones a couple of years ago, and these seem to be the same as the ones that I got a few years ago. The only difference I've been able to tell so far is I think they've changed the texture of the plastic yet again, and the ear pads are new. Other than that, they are the same, and I'm not going to do a full review of these headphones. Again, if you want to see that, go down below. So, but I am here mostly to talk about these ear pads. So without further ado, let's open these ear pads up and compare them to a few different ear pads that I have. We're going to start with the velour head pads, or ear pads. Okay. All right. Get rid of that. And there you go. As you can see, very fine mesh there on the back. They're basically almost see-through, right? They feel good in the hand. Let's press down on them, see if they spring back. They do. I'll compare them to the stock pads. They're less springy than the stock pads. Let's look at the ear hole size difference. Yeah, as you can see, the ear hole is significantly bigger on these than on the stock pads that come with the 8323s. So I think comfort-wise, these are going to, of course, be a gigantic upgrade over the stock pads. So we will address sound quality, but I haven't listened with these yet. I literally just took them out of the bag. So, yeah. As far as height difference goes, pretty big. Yeah, these are significantly bigger than the stock pads. So let's compare them to the Brainwaves pads, the HM5s. And as far as thickness goes, they're almost as thick. Not quite, but almost. Let's check ear hole size. Pretty close. Maybe the HM5s are very slightly bigger, but very close on ear pad size. And as far as, like, quote, the see-through nature of it, they're pretty much the same. Although it looks like the HM5 is maybe slightly less shear there on the back, but these do compare pretty favorably with the Brainwaves pads. Yeah, now I'm going to compare it to the pad, because the reason I got two sets of these ear pads is I have another set of headphones, my ATH M50Xs, that I wanted to swap the pads out. These are not the stock pads; these are some Shure pads. But I wanted to try these because I've tried the Brainwaves on the M50Xs, and I feel it just ruins the sound of the M50Xs. So I will compare, just for one last comparison, we'll compare the Shure pad to the new one. Oops. Ear hole, it looks to be a little bit wider on the Shure, about the same height. Obviously, these are thicker pads than the Shures, and these have much more, it's much less see-through on the back there than the new pads. So there are the velour compared to three other pads, right? So yeah, great, good stuff. So let's go ahead and just open up. We're going to take a look at the protein leather ones now. Open this up. All right. These feel good in the hand. Pretty compared to the velour pads. Of course, protein leather is pretty different from velour. The way it feels, but they both feel pretty good. Let's check the thickness of each of these pads. The leather pads are slightly smaller or less thick than the velour pads. Let's put them on top of each other. Pretty similar in size. These are slightly less thick, which is good because these might work on the M50s. We'll see. We'll see. And yeah, ear holes seem to be about the same. And as far as the sheerness on the back, focus camera, pretty much the same. So yeah. Oh, I guess we'll compare them to. Let's compare these to the other pads. This, of course, is the protein leather next to the 8323 stock pad. Brainwave pad. And, of course, as you can see, it's not as thick as the Brainwaves pad, but... And, of course, the Shure pad. So, it's a bit thicker than the Shure pad. Not by much, just a hair. So... There you go. That is all of the comparisons between my existing headphone pads and this, physically. So, of course, I'm going to do some comfort testing and sound tests and all that. I'll be doing it both on my Monoprices and my Audio-Technica headphones, to where I'll be able to tell you what I think of these pads. So, that's it for the intro. See you with some conclusions. Okay, so we're going to do round one of sound quality as it compares to the Monoprices here. And we're going to talk about how the pads stacked up against each other. We're going to start with the stock pads. And the stock pads sound more or less fine with the Monoprices, but, you know, they're whatever, right? The protein leather pads sound it's not really an upgrade in the sound quality department versus the stock pads. They're pretty similar in sound. So whatever. Now, here's where it gets interesting. We're going to talk about the velour pads here, and these offered a pretty significant improvement of sound over the protein leather ones. There is better clarity and less harshness with the velour versus the protein leather pads. So out of the pads that I bought today, they are, quote, the winners. Now, I, of course, did compare it to the Brainwaves because they're what I have sitting around. and they were pretty similar to the Brainwaves, and in some ways they might even be slightly better than the Brainwaves as far as sound quality goes. So at least if you're going to pair, if you want to know what pads to get with Monoprice's own 8323s, make this easy for you. If and sound quality is your primary concern, get the velour pads. There. Now, the stock Monoprice pads are about to meet a very cutty fate with the the foam material here is going to get cut off, because I did also test with the M50s, and none of these pads, the thicker pads, did the M50s any favor in the sound quality department. They all made the M50s sound significantly worse than the Shure pads that are on there now. So we're going to try cutting it, and part of it might be due to the fact of, I just knocked the camera around. Well, that'll stay in. Why not? A big part of that might be the fact that these are basically sheer, and the pads that I have on the M50s are basically opaque. So, yeah, there's definitely a difference there. And as I cutty, we'll see if that improves things any. So, see you guys in the next part. Okay, folks, here is sound quality part 2, where I talk about how these pads stacked up with, for the M50Xs here. And the foam that I cut out of the stock pads did nothing really to improve the sound of the Brainwaves. Now, one quick note about the Brainwaves before I continue. This is going to be the last time I actually talk about the Brainwaves in this review, because as far as comfort goes, and I didn't mention this is my fault in the earlier part of the video, the Brainwaves are second to none in the comfort department. The material is more plush with the Brainwaves. They're just very simply more comfortable than any of these other pads that I have. So if comfort is your primary concern, the Brainwaves are an excellent companion piece to the Monoprice 8323s. They pair up great. So there you go. They do not pair well with the M50s because of the sound quality issue. Now, I only know about the protein leather Brainwaves pads, not the velour ones. The velour ones might actually do better, and I'm about to explain why. But I don't have a pair of velour Brainwaves, so I can't say. So anyway, I tried the protein leather ones with the M50s, and they sounded bad, even with the foam that I cut off from the stock 8323 pads. These just sounded bad. Not good sound quality, the end. Now, let's talk about the velour pads versus the Shure pads that I've had on the M50s. Without the foam pads, the velour ones sounded bad. Again, that's because they're more or less sheer. But observe, if you roll that in there, they're both basically opaque now. So that kind of gives them the same type of, back, right? For sound, to catch sound or whatever. So putting in these into these pads significantly improved the sounds on the velour ones. I was really surprised because I tested the protein leather ones first, and it might have helped the sound a small amount, but it was definitely still really bad. But with these velour ones, wow, the difference absolutely blew me away that it made with the velour ones. And in fact, it improved it so much that as far as which one sounds better, that might be personal preference. I do think the Shure pads are still somewhat better. They have somewhat more clarity than the velours, even with the these. But okay, so here are the results of comfort test number 1. Basically, the way I tested these is I used the pads literally all day long on these headphones, and I tested on the M50s first. And The first pads I tested were the velour Monoprice pads, and they had what I would call average comfort after wearing them all day. And what I mean by that is they weren't extremely good and they weren't extremely bad. They were just there. It wasn't, it wasn't unpleasant having them on all day long, but it wasn't exactly, there is some slight warmth in the ear, slight fatigue, nothing overly bad with the velour pads. And then, of course, the Shure pads that I've been using, which aren't aren't pads that are necessarily being reviewed today. I tested those out on the M50s as well, and truthfully, they weren't any worse than these velour pads. So, and I did do more sound tests, and there is a significant audio quality drop off with the velour pads on the M50. So with the audio quality being worse and the comfort being no better, I cannot recommend these pads for the M50s. Whoops, as I drop one. I didn't bother doing an all-day comfort test with the protein leather pads, the Monoprice ones, because I already knew that they sounded significantly worse than these pads, so I wouldn't recommend those anyway because of the significant sound quality drop-off. But yes, it's less of a drop-off with the velour pads, but there's not really any extra comfort, so I'm sticking with the Shure pads on the M50. So now all I got to do is do a final comfort test on my actual Monoprice headphones and have some final thoughts. So see you in a little while. Okay, folks, so I had a few days to live with these pads on the Monoprices, and as far as the comfort test goes, obviously the brainwaves takes it away as the winner. But that being said, wearing these all day with the Monoprices was not unpleasant. So they are a gigantic upgrade, over the stock pads, right? No doubt, hugely better than the stock pads. Now, obviously, I had the wear issue with the first set of velour pads that I got. I mean, it looks just really bad. But here are the pads that I got from Monoprice, which, as you can see, are on a pair of 8323s. And I've had, I think, these pads for a couple of days, and there's no real signs of wear on these yet. So I don't know why these pads got worn and the others didn't. I'm not even going to try to figure that out. Maybe it was all the taking off and putting on of headphones. I don't know. But whatever. I'm still happy to have them. So of these two pads, I would recommend the velour ones over the protein leather pads, simply because the protein leather pads are no more comfortable than the velours. The velours are slightly more comfortable, and I think the velours have better, quote, sound quality in most applications. Now, of course, I did do a few more sound comparisons between, I couldn't help myself, between the brainwaves and the velour pads on the 8323s. And they were pretty close in sound quality. I did many tests over many days just to make sure, and yes, they are similar. It's hard to say which one is better, but I do have one final thing to say, and that is I am highly appreciative of the really good customer service I got from Monoprice. Even though this is a very low-end, cheap item, they did a fantastic job with customer service, unlike another company I could name, where I just bought something and it was incredibly expensive and got pathetically bad customer service. But hey, that's neither here nor there. So that is basically it. I really only recommend these velour pads, and only really for the 8323s. They might be good for other headphones. I don't know. If you have any experience with these ear pads, of course, let me know in the comments below. So I know I went on a long time about ear pads, but hey, sometimes people like to know. So that's it. If you like this, as always, do the stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Live long and prosper. Keep on rocking.